Well, hello, I'm Ezra Levant. It is January 11th, let me just check that, and you're watching Battleground. It's my first Friday back in a long time. It's good to be back. Last week, my friends David Menzies and Sheila Gunn-Reid were here. It's called Super Chat. It's a thing that Google set up on YouTube where it's a live chat. Obviously, you can see to the right-hand side of the screen, there's live comments. And if you want yours to be put in a bold highlighted color and appended to the top of that little box, you can chip in a few bucks in any currency, frankly. You know, we've had people from all around the world. And the great thing about that is we actually get to keep 70% of it. Frankly, I think it's a bit outrageous that YouTube takes 30%, but they are providing the forum. We have over 100 people watching, and I think more will join. What we do on this is we play little video clips that we don't have time for in other produced video segments, and I like to take the comments and questions. It's sort of a version of the Ask Me Anything, and it's fun, and you never know what you're going to get in the super chats, right? Because it's random. I even like reading the hate mail and the trolls just because it's fun. And so feel free. Lauren Southern, spelled the masculine way, says, Happy Friday, Ezra and Rebels. Well, thank you very much, Lauren. So there's a few topics I wouldn't mind covering. I mean, we're based here in Canada, of course. Toronto is our world headquarters. But as you know, we have journalists at The Rebel around the world. We have rebels in London, England. We have rebels in the United States of America. And occasionally we send rebels to other farther reaches. I don't know if you remember. I think it was in November where we sent, or October, we sent David Menzies to embed him. Can we grab some of the B-roll of that Mexican? To embed him in the Mexican migrant convoy that was making its way from El Salvador and Honduras and places like that, wherever, to Mexico. And Menzies was with them, I think, for 4 days. Boy, you know what? People go to Mexico and they love it because they just go to the resorts. Menzies was not in any resort, I can tell you that. And it was rough. I mean, we've sent people to some pretty rough places in the world. I've been to Iraq on behalf of the Rebel. We've had people in India, people in Morocco, but it sounded harrowing. There he is. He's looking okay there. But look at that. And what's interesting there is you see the logistics, right? You see the ambulance, you see the people in the pinnies. And one of the interesting things, and I know this is a complete tangent, but, and that says Cruz de la, that's the Red Cross of Mexico. And there was, when you move 5,000 people, Cruz Roja de Mexico, I can't speak Spanish. When you move 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people, that's an enormous logistical exercise. You need food, you need water, you need medicine, you need porta potties, you need a place to stay. One of the things, look at that, look at that. They weren't walking, by the way. They would walk a bit, but they were going like that. Tell me this isn't great footage. That's all taken by Menzies and our videographer Efrain, who speaks a little bit of Espanol, who was down there. Look at that. That's great. And by the way, how many women and children are there? Yeah, there are some. I grant you that. There's a woman right there. Oh yeah, and just, you know, free clothes and stuff. This is a logistical exercise. Menzies says that about 80% of the people were young, single, military-aged men. And he talked to them, and none of them were fleeing any genuine persecution. They all said they wanted the economic opportunity of America, which is obvious. America is synonymous with economic opportunity because they have the rule of law and property rights and freedom. But that ain't being a refugee, is it? I know what the word refugee means because the United Nations has a fairly strict definition of the word. It's someone who is in a genuine fear of imminent danger based on their own race or religion or something like that. That ain't what these folks are. And by the way, the Canadian Immigration and Refugee Board, just for example, says simply being in a war zone does not make you a refugee. Our friend Giddy Mammon told us once he had a client that he was trying to get into Canada, I think, who I think her husband was killed in Lebanon, and she said, I want to come to Canada as a refugee, and they said, sorry, you are in a crummy place in the world, but that doesn't make you a refugee. You are in no imminent harm or danger based on your characteristics. So yeah, these were not real refugees. And thank you for letting me go on that little tangent. That's the fun thing about this Friday show. It's not scripted, so I can talk about whatever I want. But the reason I show you that, besides I want to show off that we are global, and David did 27 videos in 4 days, by the way. Oh, I didn't say where you could find that. If you want to see those videos, go to caravanreports.com. Caravanreports.com, and just scroll down there. I think we got 27 vids. Yeah, you can see them. They're just all embedded there on the page. He just did a ton of them. I was really proud of that, as you can tell. So there you go. Okay, but back to today's show. I have with me 4 clips because, of course, Donald John Trump has shut down the majority of operations of the United States government. And I saw a great question put on Twitter for my American friends, and of course it would apply to friends outside of America. Other than through the media, has your life in any way been affected by the shutdown? Actually, the way I saw it phrased was, other than through the media, would you even know there was a government shutdown? And I think about that in my own life. I mean, if the government of Canada one day were ever to be shut down, how would I know, other than the CBC maybe would go off the air? Oh boy. So literally hundreds of people would have their viewing habits impacted. How would I know? How would it impact me? I mean, I suppose if I was on some pension or something, that could be impacted. I don't know if that's covered in the shutdown. I know in the United States the military continues to operate, obviously, during the shutdown. I just don't know how my life would be impacted by the shutdown. I was traveling on Monday and Tuesday in American airports, and they seem to be operating just fine. So yeah, the reason why Trump has shut down the government operations is because he wants $5 billion for his wall, which is a drop in a bucket for the U.S. budget. It is a fraction of the costs inflicted on the United States by illegal immigration from Mexico. And by the way, it's also a fraction of what the United States pays in foreign aid to other countries for their national defense. Hey, Alex or Justin, can you get the tweet from Benjamin Netanyahu the other day to Trump promoting the wall? I'd like to show that tweet from Netanyahu. It was in English, obviously. And I've been to Israel a few times. We've been there a couple times with The Rebel. You can get those videos at rebelisrael.com. In fact, I might show one or two later. Israel obviously has walls and fences because it is surrounded by countries and terrorist groups that hate it. Now, it is formally at peace with Jordan and Egypt, but that doesn't mean there aren't terrorists in those countries who would sneak through, creep through, dig through, fly into. So they have tall walls, and those walls extend underground. And they don't extend hundreds of feet underground. That would be impractical. But as the terrorists burrow underground, the Israelis have developed technology to detect them and to foil those underground tunnels. And they just plain old work. And I've showed them to you before, and I don't propose to show them to you now, but they have a hundreds of miles long security barrier in Israel, and they call it a fence. Tell me when we find that Netanyahu tweet. Just search, use advanced search on Twitter for Netanyahu, and then just the word wall, and you'll find it quickly. Let me know if you want me to find it. See, the thing in Israel is there's Arab towns, which are sort of terrorist hotspots, a mile or two away from Jewish towns. So you would have terrorists just strap on a pack of, dynamite or whatever, and literally walk a mile into a Jewish town and blow himself up. Like, it was that low tech. Like, it wasn't a drone, it wasn't a car bomb, it was just a human suicide bomber in a Palestinian town, put on the jacket, walk 2 miles over. Okay, do we have the tweet? Yeah, there we go. There's Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump is right. I built a wall along Israel's southern border. It stopped all illegal immigration. Great success, great idea. And then the Israeli-American flags. That was a neat little tweet by Netanyahu, and I think it's very well put. Now, that genuinely was about illegal immigration, because although, in my mind, the primary purpose of the walls in Israel to stop terrorism, Israel, being a liberal welfare state, Western-style democracy, is also attractive to migrants, economic migrants. And many of them were coming up from Africa. So you would have Somalis, Sudanese, Ethiopians, whatever, I don't know where they were from. Many of them were Muslim, but it wasn't even their religion that was the salient characteristic. It's just they wanted the free stuff in Israel. I mean, if you had a choice between living in Ethiopia or Sudan or Chad or Egypt and Israel, where would you rather live? I know the answer. So it really was an illegal immigration thing. Can we get some B-roll of the internal fence that I'm referring to? Because Netanyahu there was talking about the border between Israel and Egypt. But the better wall example is the fence. And I've shown you this before, and forgive me, I want to show it to you again. And the reason is, and this is what's so important, because I've seen Democrats and leftists say, oh, but you can saw through a metal wall. Of course you can. And you can jackhammer through a concrete wall. And you can get some sort of ladder or other apparatus to get over any wall. I mean, if a wall is 10 foot high, you can get an 11-foot ladder. If it's 20 feet high, you can get a 21-foot ladder. Do we have any B-roll? It can be our Rebel B-roll, or it could be any other B-roll. See, this Israeli security fence between these Arab towns I'm mentioning and the Jewish towns, for most of its course, it is not a 10, 20-foot concrete wall. It's actually a series of fences that obviously, yeah, perfect. Hold it there, hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. So do you see that you've got on the right-hand side of it a fence, and you can sort of make out, you can see it on the left-hand side of the screen there really well. It's a fence of sensors. There's sort of different layers, right? You've got barbed wire, whatever, and then you have sensors that sense movement and touch. And then, very important, you see that sand? That's not just there by accident. That's like a sand trap. It's a footprint trap, really, to see if anyone or anything has gone through. Then you have a road that is not a public road. That is not a public highway. That is a security road only for the military, police, or whoever. And then that guardrail on the left is just for the road. So as you can see here, if left unattended, keep it up here, if left unattended, it would not be hard to get through this fence, right? Well, that's the thing, is the fence is to detect and delay. And as we saw this, as we observed, this is our Rebel footage, we were right there. This is actually in Greater Jerusalem. We saw these Jeeps puttering up and down this road. So there is no fence, there is no wall in the world that is impervious to going over, under, through. And this one, understand, this fence does not try to physically stop exiting forever. It's designed to delay you 2 minutes, detect you, and then immediately it's part of a wall system. That's the phrase I kept hearing there, a system. Now I notice a super chat come in. I promise I'll get you in a minute, Tamajit, thank you. Now can we go, it might be in this video or another one, to where the wall is 27 feet high? and made of concrete. It's probably in that same Rebel Israel compilation page, if that's where you found that, Alex. So, as you can see, in that wall system, that fence system I just showed you, you need a certain amount of space, right? From the ditch on this side to the barbed wire, to the sensor fence, to the road. I don't know, is that 100 feet? Like so that's fine in the rural parts. But how do you do that in a dense urban setting? Well, that's where they have the very tall walls that are only tall concrete walls for a couple % of the length of the route. Because you don't need a huge tall wall if you've got the sensors and if you've got the mobile reaction team. So just go ahead and put that up. It's probably on the Rebel. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you can let this roll, but do you see that? So this, as you can see, maybe you can't see, this is in an urban setting, or more urban, where you don't have 100 feet. This, right on the other side of that fence, and we went through that, and by the way, that's David Menzies talking to the retired commander who built the whole fence. Very interesting. I've actually met him 3 times. So the first thing about this fence you can see, this wall, is it's extremely high. Danny Tirza, that's right, I forgot his name for a second. Do you see how high this fence is? I'll tell you, that is 27 feet high. And what Tirza told me is that the Supreme Court of Israel, which is just as meddlesome as the Supreme Court in the West, was petitioned by Arabs, of course, to reduce the height. And he went into court and argued that it should be kept 27 feet high. Why? Because 27 feet high is so psychologically high that that no one would jump down. So let's say you managed to quickly clamber up it. No one, not even a 20-year-old daredevil, would jump down from a 27-foot high. And you can see there's a barbed wire chain link fence on the top of it. Would you jump off the top of that fence? No, you would not. Whereas you might jump off a 10-foot fence for sure, or even a 20-foot fence, but a 27, would you jump off that? No, you'd be worried you'd break your legs or your feet or your ankles. So you're on, obviously David and Danny Tirza here are on the Israeli side, the Jewish side of the wall. You can see there's sort of like a utility wires and stuff on it. That's great. Do we have, and you can see there's sort of an outpost there, because unlike where the fence is wide and you have patrol vehicles, here on the other side of this fence, I think it's actually Bethlehem, on the other side of this fence, if I recall. It's a city, so it makes sense to have, yeah, this is another shot. This is another shot. This is from the Israeli side. Now, of course, there are, and I don't know if we have footage of it, if you can keep looking around. Of course, there are places where you can go between the Arab and the Jewish side, like at an airport, where they just make sure you don't smuggle bombs. They have transfer stations for workers, for example, for people visiting family. That's how it works. So yeah, I'm glad that Netanyahu said, hey, our southern border wall keeps out the illegal immigrants. That's true. But I think even more instructive is the border fence. Yeah, this is another shot of it. Thanks very much for showing. Yeah, this is exactly it. So you can walk into it, and it's like going through an airport security, but it's much faster. Much faster, like they have like 10 lanes or something. And they go through, and it's sort of an electronic sniffer to see if you have a bomb on you, and you just show your ID and you go through. That's great. Thanks for getting those clips for me, guys. Okay, so let me catch up. We've got a super chat from Tamachik Chakraborty who says, can Netanyahu be invited to the USA for a speech on the wall? I think that would be very powerful if he was, because people would know 2 things. First of all, Netanyahu carries credibility when it comes to issues of security. He can tell the story. And although there are elements in the Democratic Party that despise Israel and Jews, and that's a growing part of the Democrats, I think Netanyahu can reach people in America, rhetorically, emotionally, politically, that are beyond Trump's circle. I wish he would do that. So it's 12:20 and I haven't shown you what I meant to show you, so without further ado or to-do, let us look at some fun videos from the week. Let's start with Jim Acosta. He is a showboating CNN journalist who just can't stop stepping in it. So, of course, President Trump flew to Texas to inspect an area of the wall and whatnot, and Jim Acosta went there, and he walked along a section of an unguarded border. I'd call it a fence because it was a steel fence with sort of slats in it, like poles. And I say again, it is not a solution to simply have a fence that's not patrolled or a fence without sensors. Frankly, what good is that? What good is that? You give someone enough time, they will cut through it, go over it, go under it, just like that Israeli fence I showed you. You need it to be monitored. Movement detectors, visual, touch detectors. An electric fence, not that zaps you necessarily, but that detects you touching it. And that can tell, was that an animal that touched it, like a deer or something, or was that a person? So simply having a barrier will never work. I mean, look at the Great Wall of China. It wasn't just a wall, it was a wall with outposts along it. Nothing's changed in the centuries. So look at this Jim Acosta video. Take a look at this.
And here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As you can see, yes, you can see through these slats to the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. But as we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence here in the McAllen, Texas area. As a matter of fact, there are some other businesses behind me along this highway. There's a gas station, Burger King, and so on. But no sign of the national emergency that the president has been talking about. As a matter of fact, it's pretty tranquil down here.
Now, you got to laugh. Did Jim Acosta think that in the middle of the afternoon with CNN cameras swarming around, that would be when the migrant smugglers would choose to cross? Like, is that what he thought it would be? If he went there at night with night vision goggles, I'd pay a little more attention to that. But isn't Jim Acosta proving the point? There was a fence there. There is a fence there. And so there was no migrant rush. And isn't Acosta making the point that if that fence, just the fence alone, forget the detections, the motion sensors, the touch sensors, the infrared cameras, just the bare fence alone was enough to stop migration there, of course, because you would have to have some ingenuity to get over, through that fence. Maybe it's not a lot of ingenuity, but if you've got to bring with you a 10-foot ladder and you got to climb up and down, that's a little more ingenuity and effort than just walking across an unguarded border. Wasn't Jim Acosta sort of proving the point there? That sort of made me laugh, but my main point there is, if that area has a fence without the border system, the fence system, that's the number one thing I learned from Danny Tiers at the Israeli fences. A fence is never enough. And a fence can never be enough, which is why they don't try. Tiers has said it again and again about the fence. It's not actually trying to stop them. It's trying to slow them down and detect them so a rapid response team can come. And once you know that it's a fence system, now you can't just have the system without the fence. And if you got to choose one or the other, I'd probably choose just the fence. But in Israel, they have the fence and the system, and that's what works. And it works 99%, 100%. I mean, the number of suicide bombers who would simply just walk from, like you saw that, look, that grove. It looked like an orchard or something. These Palestinian terrorists would just walk through the orchards a mile. It wouldn't even take them 15 minutes to walk from their Muslim town to the Jewish town and blow himself up. You put that fence barrier there, it's going to slow them down and stop them. And it cut those terrorist attacks by over 99%. And frankly, I think $5 billion could cover the fence, but you're going to need an ongoing budget for enforcing the fence system. Take it out of foreign aid. Take it out of the TSA. I saw news today that the Miami International Airport, the TSA, the Transportation Safety Authority, aren't showing up for work because of the government shutdown. I checked. You know what the TSA's annual budget is? It's $7.5 billion US. I got a fact for you. In 17 years the TSA has been operating, they've cost American taxpayers more than $100 billion. $100 billion. But of course they've inflicted much more damage on the U.S. economy from slowing down travel and just wrecking the whole experience and people who, it's awful. So let's say it's cost $1 trillion. The TSA has never caught a terrorist. Did you know that? 17 years, $100 billion, millions of customers groped, billions of hours wasted. They've never caught a terrorist. If you took the $7.5 billion spent on the TSA every year, you could have a hell of a border force. And that's the thing, because really, I showed you the clip there of the Arabs going through sort of the checkpoint to go through the fence. So I want to let you know there are plenty of checkpoints, many checkpoints. And that's really the question for anyone who's against a wall or whatever. There will be a wall. The only question is, where will the wall be? Will the wall be around your house, as it is for Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these fancy folks with the wall around their house to protect against bad people outside? But that's not great, because not everyone can afford a wall and private security. Will the wall be around your sort of compound, like the Vatican has a massive wall? Will the wall be around your airports? Or can you be smart and put the wall around the whole country so your country is safe and the bad people are kept out? Why would you let the bad people into your country and then have little walls around little things like a movie theater or a shopping center or a school? Maybe you need those things also, but isn't it a good idea to fight your enemy in the first ditch and not the last ditch? All right. So I showed you Jim Acosta at a border wall saying, hey, at this border wall, I don't see any migrants. Yeah, that's the point, Jim. Well, when CNN was going down to San Diego near the wall, they reached out to a local TV station and asked to speak to their expert on the wall. They were really excited to find a journalist who specialized in the wall and border issues. But take a look at this. Roll this clip from KUSI News.
As a sign of the times in this debate on the shutdown, CNN asked if KUSI would provide a reporter to offer our local view of the debate, especially to learn if the wall works in San Diego.
KUSI offered our own Dan Plant, who's reported many times that the wall is not an issue here. In fact, most officials believe it is effective. The issue we face is the migrants and the debate over their treatment.
Now, knowing this, CNN declined to have us on their programs, which often present the wall as not required in other places, like the stretch of the Texas border the president visited earlier today. They didn't like what they heard from us.
It's just some background for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Yeah, not really. Now, the thing is, in Israel is extremely real life. The wall, life and death. It's a small country surrounded by hostile nations and, more dangerously, I put it to you, hostile terrorist groups that are not subject to some of the same restraints as hostile nations. The Corker says build a wall at Roxham Road. Yeah, it would be very simple to do so. Heck, even a chain link fence would do there, don't you think? Instead, Trudeau has built a welcome center there. Thanks to the Corker. Eagle's Nest chipped in $100. Thank you very much. Very generous of you. Eagle's Nest, if you have a chat or a comment, feel free to put that there and I'll read it. But right there, I just have your contribution. Dave T says, Ezra gushing over Israel. Dave, I think you've missed my entire point. Israel is the prototype for America. And I agree with the Corker. It's a prototype for Canada, at least at that Roxham Road border crossing. My point about it's not just Israel. Mexico has a wall on its border with one of its neighbors. Yemen has a wall. Saudi Arabia has a wall. The Great Wall of China. The Soviet-dominated East Germans built a wall to keep their people in, which is a different kind of wall, isn't it? And we all have walls and doors and locks on our own homes. And as Donald Trump said so poetically in his address on Tuesday, we don't build walls because we hate people outside. We build walls because we love people on the inside. Sometimes we hate people on the outside too. I hate terrorists. I hate law breakers, law-breaking criminals. But I'm more concerned about protecting people inside than I am at being mean to people outside. Anyways, there's some other comments there. I want to roll some more clips. I promise I'll read any comments that are attached to a super chat. An Eagle's Nest, if you have a comment, I'm happy to read it. So I'll keep my eyes peeled for that from you. That's very generous of you, chipping $100. That's great. Now, I should tell you that, and this is counterintuitive to leftists who actually don't know many new immigrants or minorities. They're just sort of like Daenerys Targaryen on the show, the HBO show Game of Thrones. They see themselves as white saviors for minorities, but they don't actually know any minorities. Because new immigrants to Canada, new immigrants to the United States who come lawfully, they follow the rules. They had to wait, and almost every immigrant I've ever spoken to said they had to wait a very long time. Sometimes months, sometimes years. They had to study. They had to pass a citizenship test. They had to follow the rules. They had to pay fees. And so if you are a law-abiding immigrant, you follow the rules because you respect the rules. Even if you don't like the rules, you respect them because you're respecting this new country. You're making a dramatic choice to leave the country of your birth to go somewhere new. That's a hell of a choice. It's like getting married. It's like switching a religion almost. Not quite, but you're giving up the land of your birth to go somewhere new. That's a moral, emotional, personal decision. So you're doing it lawfully. You're doing it, you're complying, you're learning, you're changing who you are in a bit. And that can be wonderful. And then you see someone just hop ahead in front of you. No wait, no fee, no rule. In fact, the very first thing they do is break the law. Oh, and then they're getting $50,000 in handouts from Trudeau. They're getting deference from the Democrats. That's outrageous. Well, one such outrageous case, which happened most recently, is that there was a Sikh immigrant, Sikhism being the religion, a Sikh immigrant from Fiji, I think, who came to California the lawful way. And he didn't, and you know what he said? Obviously, I only learned about him after he was murdered by an illegal immigrant. But imagine you come to a country, you love it so much, you follow all the rules, and you want to join the police. And I think he joined the K-9 unit. We all love cops in the K-9 unit, don't we? Because they're sticking up for us, and they're also friends of dogs. And those are like two amazing things. So this Sikh immigrant, I think he was from Fiji, named Ronnie Singh. He was murdered by an illegal immigrant. And he was a legal immigrant himself. So his brother, Reggie Singh, sat down with Donald Trump the other day. And let me play a clip of this. I found this very touching. Take a look.
So Ronnie Singh, we originally from Fiji Islands. He always wanted to be in law enforcement. So legally, we migrated to America to fulfill his dream, to join the law enforcement. After English is our second language, he worked on that, got his education, applied for a law enforcement agency, and he was asked to get his citizenship. He worked towards that, and he became a cop, K-9, Corporal K-9. And the way he was killed, what my family's going through right now, I do not want any other family, law enforcement person to go through that. Whatever it takes to minimize, put a stop to it, my family fully supports it. At 33 years old, Ronil Singh was cremated, and I had to pick up his remains. It breaks my heart. And no one should ever, ever go through that. Looking at that 5-month-old baby, looking for his dad, no one should ever go through that on Christmas Day. That's all. That's it.
Thank you. So that's very sad. Very, very sad, isn't it? He had a funeral. I should point out, I saw on Twitter someone checked the Twitter feeds of all the California congressmen and women, most of whom are Democrats. And I think he found that only 2 of the massive California delegation even mentioned the murder of Ronnie Singh because they don't give a damn, because it's contrary to the narrative. It reminds me of the Canadian coverage of Omar Khadr, the war criminal and terrorist who murdered U.S. Army medic Christopher Speer. They never talk about Christopher Speer, and they certainly don't talk about his widow, Tabitha Speer, or his 2 children, Taryn and Tanner Speer, who just started college. Because if you talk about the murdered Army medic and his widow and his 2 fatherless kids, and if you read, as I have, their affidavit of their impact on the family of the murder, you are so sad and emotionally, I mean, that was very touching, wasn't it, his brother? And you can never again fall for the media narrative that Omar Khadr is the victim. That's why they never say Christopher Speer. That's why they never say Taryn Tanner or Tabitha Speer. They never say those names. Because if you introduce the real victim, well then you're instantly reframed that Omar Khadr is what he is, a murderer. That's why you never hear the victims. And that is why the California delegation to the House of Representatives, to the Congress, was silent on that very touching case of Ronil Singh. I didn't know Sikhs celebrated Christmas. Maybe they just celebrated as a secular holiday. I didn't, because I saw a picture of them in front of the Christmas tree. Maybe they were just somewhere else. He mentioned Christmas there. This beautiful family with a little kid and a 33-year-old guy, just in the prime of life, K-9 officer. What's not to love? Immigrant from Fiji, loves America, loves Christmas. How are you not going to love a guy like that? Because if you talk about that, and if you talk about his little boy wondering where his dad is, you'll never again think, oh, these poor illegal immigrants are the victims, because you'll be reminded that the victim had a name, Ronil Singh, and now his family. But we are lucky to have an ally on this. The 44th President of the United States, when he was in office, agreed with the 45th President. Here, let's take a look at Barack Obama.
We now have an actual humanitarian crisis on the border that only underscores the need to drop the politics and fix our immigration system once and for all.
Oh, well, look at that. He used the word crisis, didn't he? Well, I guess it's different when Barack Obama says it. Yeah, of course it's a crisis. And I won't play for you videos of Chuck Schumer saying the same thing, because of course it's a crisis. But they like that crisis because it feeds the welfare state. And most importantly, those people grow up to be good Democrats. I see a super chat. Dale M. chips in $1.99. Thanks, Dale. I don't see a question or a comment from you. If you have one, put it in there. I'll try and spot it and read. Oh, there's one from you, Dale. We love you all down here, Ezra, U.S. Well, thanks very much, Dale. It's nice of you to say. We have a good number of Americans who watch our stuff. I remember when we started The Rebel. Can I share with you a little anecdote? It's 12:38, so I still have a couple minutes. When we started The Rebel, when the Sun News Network was euthanized by our version of the FCC, it's called the CRTC up here, we made a decision not to enter the U.S. market in any way. Because I thought, well, you've got Rush Limbaugh and Drudge and The Blaze and Breitbart and 100 other sort of one-man shows. Ben Shapiro, I think the Daily Wire came along a little later. You've got all these great American outlets. So well-funded, so well-organized. Of course, you got Fox News. You got a lot of great radio. And I thought there's just no way from up in Canada that we're going to be able to compete with those well-funded guys And even though we follow American politics like the whole world does, and we follow Donald Trump very closely like the whole world does, there's cultural blind spots that we just don't know because we're Canadian. You know, and other people can detect it. It's like when we say oot and a boot the hoose instead of out and about the house. I'm joking, I'm exaggerating both accents there, but you know, there's little quirks about being a Canadian. So we thought, well, let's leave America to the Americans. We are the only conservative game in town in Canada. You know, that's 35 million people. Let's focus on that. And the thing is, that's what we thought. And but that's not what Americans seem to think. We have a ton of Americans watching our stuff, even though we weren't really trying to get American viewers to like our stuff, whether it's our commentary on Trump, or I mean that caravanreports.com where Menzies went down to Mexico. How's that? That's actually more of an American story when you think about it than a Canadian story. How's that not of interest to Americans? Or you saw Menzies there in Israel. I went to Israel. Gavin McInnes went to Israel. So when we cover international stories too, we've sent journalists to the UN Global Warming Conference 3 times. We've sent journalists to the UN Migration Conference. We've sent journalists to the UN Nanny State Conference. We've gone to 5 different UN. Go to rebelun.com. Just show people the website. If you're curious about these, by the way, go to rebelun.com and you can click on those. You see the Global Warming Conference in Poland, and scroll down a bit, past UN special reports. So you can see the Nanny State Conference. That was in India. I've never been to India. I wanted to go, but we sent 4 people there. All of them hated it. Now maybe it's because you're going to a conference in Delhi in a crowded, and the weather was so bad. You know, on your phone app, you can type in the weather from any city, and it has a word like partly cloudy or rainy or whatever. Not only was it like 30 plus degrees Celsius, which is like what, 80 plus, like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But you know that word, that descriptor, rainy, windy. You know what the word was for Delhi, India, for the week our people were there? You're not going to believe me because you think that's not a weather word. Swear to God, the word was smoke. Smoke, S-M-O-K-E. That was the best way to describe the weather. And our whole team said they were hacking up like terrible coughs. It was smoke. The number one way to describe the weather was smoke. Anyways, sorry for that little tangent there. I'm just telling you. So yeah, my point is Americans are interested in that too. And we've got a team in London, England, right? I mean, can you throw up some of the yellow vest, the raw footage, the real viral vid that Jack and Martina did? I think the title of it is Raw Best Paris Video Coverage, Paris Protest Coverage, whatever. So that's the yellow vest phenomenon. I don't think it's as big in the States. I don't think the States is paying much attention to this yellow vest thing. I know Europe is. I know it's spread to the UK, it's spread to the Netherlands, it's spread to Belgium, and it's here in Canada. My American viewers, maybe you can tell me if you've seen any of these yellow vests in America. I haven't seen that in the news. You know what I'm talking about, right? Put it up on the screen, Jack's video from Paris. These protesters in Paris, and it's spread throughout France, obviously. Why were they wearing those yellow high visibility vests? Yeah, look at that. So those yellow vests there, those aren't cops. Those aren't cops. Those are protesters. Isn't that funny? Is that sped up or something, or is that the speed of? Yeah, keep playing that while I'm chatting. Let me just talk a little. Look at that. They were fire hosing them and tear gassing them, and Jack was right in the middle of it. Look at all that tear gas. I've never been in tear gas. I hear it's extremely painful. And if you watch this whole video, look at that. We were right. That's the Arc de Triomphe, obviously. That's huge. Look how small the people are on the bottom of it. Did you know that someone flew a biplane through that? Can you just freeze it there for 1 second? Freeze it. Can you believe? I know this is an anecdote, it's a tangent, will you forgive me? Did you know someone flew an airplane through the Arc de Triomphe? Can you believe that? There are some independent-minded free spirits in France. Anyway, okay, click play again. Keep this up there. It's better than watching my ugly face. So that's Jack on the right, for those of you who don't know, and he's interviewing some Frenchman who speaks good English. Hey, throw the volume up. Can you get the audio on this?
Tax, and there is a big fed up feeling in France right now.
So is this just anti-Macron?
Not only, it's more general than that. It's a general societal. They're chanting the.
What are they chanting? They're chanting the national
anthem. Yeah. So this is not a right-wing situation. This is a left-wing situation. It's people coming to the street because we say we've got enough.
Okay, kill the volume, but leave the B-roll up. What's interesting about this, and I actually encourage you to go and find this video on our website. You saw the fire hoses, you see the tear gas. You will see in this video, it's a long video too, there is no violence. Do you see any violence there? Now there's some guys wearing face masks like that, but I think most of them were doing it just because of the tear gas. These weren't Antifa. They were wearing this because of the tear gas. And they were not, these were not Antifa thugs. They were not desecrating things. They were not violent. But you understand that Emmanuel Macron was hosing them down and tear gassing them just because they were protesting. Okay, you could lose the footage. But you understand my point? So those yellow vests were symbolic because Macron was jacking up the fuel tax in the name of fighting global warming. And fuel's already extremely expensive in Europe, especially in France. And the weird thing is, Macron is requiring everyone who rides on a motorcycle, or you know those little Vespas that they tool around in France, has to wear those yellow high-vis vests. And the French people are fashionable, by the way. And every car motorist has to have one in their glove compartment. And if you don't have your yellow high-vis vest in your glove compartment, that's an offense. So it wasn't just the taxes, it was this stupid nanny state rule. People have been riding mopeds in France for a century. And now Emmanuel Macron says, no, excusez-moi, we now have a rule that you must, I'm not even going to try my accent because it's going to slip into a Cockney accent or a Russian accent. I've got to practice my French accent before I do it. But Macron said, you got to have these yellow vests. And so the yellow vest became a symbol of get out of my way, get out of my life, get out of my glove compartment, get out of my wallet. And I think it's the first time I've ever heard of that you have smaller government riots. In fact, I wouldn't even call it riots. I'm not going to call it riots because they were 99% of them were peaceful protesters. You saw that. Frankly, the government was more violent than the people. Anyhow, for my American viewers, tell me if you've ever seen yellow vest protests in the States. I have not heard of it, but we see them in Canada. I see some super chats, so let me catch up on that. David Anderson, you nailed the American accent. Ezra, good to see you back live. That was a terrible American accent. By the way, there are a great number of American accents, as you know. Even New York City itself has several different kinds of accents. There's the Boston accent. There's the Valley Girl accent. There's several Californian accents. There's a Texas accent. There's a New Orleans accent. There's a Fargo accent. You know, there's sort of a Minnesota accent. There's probably 10 different accents in America. I'd say there's at least 20 accents in the UK. And I'm not going to get into doing my accents now because I'll just embarrass myself. But it's one of my favorite things about hanging out with Tommy and traveling around the UK. I haven't done that in a little while. But when we used to travel around, just the different accents, I couldn't get enough of the Sunderland accent. I couldn't get enough. Can you call up Fletcher, the John Fletcher vid? I just want to show my I've heard so many different accents in the UK. And I love the Irish accent. I love the Scottish accent. Probably my favorite. But we met a man, and I know you're indulging me. Thank you for that. Do you remember the case of John Fletcher? From Sunderland, which is near Newcastle on Tyne. And by the way, you can fly into there. I flew from Toronto to Dublin, Dublin to Newcastle. I didn't even go through London. when I went to Newcastle last time to go to Sunderland. Tell me when we got it. It's just one of Tommy's first interviews with John Fletcher, and I want to play for you. Alex, what would the name of this accent be? If you're from Sunderland, if you're from Newcastle, what would that accent be called? Sunderland and Mackham? Newcastle Geordie. Yeah, Geordie. That's a word I don't quite understand. Okay, well, let me know when we got that vid. I want to show people. Okay, let me take a second to catch up on all my super chats. I think I covered them. And I'll say again, oh, there's a few more if I scroll up. Ezra, in your opinion, what has been Justin's worst decision? That's from the Corker. I don't, you know what, maybe this, the libertarians will disagree with me. I don't like his marijuana legalization. Frankly, I think it's the worst of all worlds. An expensive bureaucracy that enriches liberal connected friends. It's actually more expensive than the black market. And I think it normalizes drug use, which is just not a good thing. I just don't think that's good. I'll call for the clip in 1 second. Nader Alcom says, my new car was totaled by an illegal in California. You know, I hear stories like that, and it's not just that. I was in California over the Christmas break, and I observed with my own eyes, when you de-institutionalize crazy people, when you normalize drug use, you get squatter camps of people who are mentally ill, drug users, probably alcoholics, who are both perpetrators of crime and victims of crime. And you have these shanty towns, and you have public needle use, and you just have a civilizational decay that is as much sad as it is angering. And that's California for you. Can you Google the San Francisco Public Works tweet that shows them testing a peeing thing? It's a new kind of paint that when you pee on it, it splashes back at you. And they're trying, so it's on Twitter. Maybe Google it. San Francisco Public Works pee. All right, yeah. Show the tweet though, I want to show the tweet. Show the tweet, because the actual tweet there, you showed it for 1 second. Put it back on. That video was embedded in a tweet. I want to show that, yeah. So it says, testing out a new pee repellent that pees back to prevent public urination. And do you see that says San Francisco Public Works? And you see it's got that blue check mark? So this is not some satirical account. This is not The Onion. Swear to God, this is the government of San Francisco. And what's their plan to deal with public urination? Not to arrest people, not to have beat cops saying, hey, move along, not to help people, not to institutionalize crazy people or get drug users, to have a pee repellent. So when you pee on it, it's super splashy and splashes back at you. That is cutting edge public policy, people, and that is California. I want to indulge one more tangent. I want to show you John Fletcher. Go ahead with the Fletcher video.
And we weren't taking the sign down, or you wasn't up to. What's happened?
The police come and says if I didn't take it down, they're going to revoke my drinks licence and take my drinks licence off us. So I've had to basically take it down.
They're going to your livelihood.
Yeah.
They're going to stop you earning money and providing for your family.
Yeah.
And how old are you, Fletch?
30.
30, and you've got this business.
Yeah.
Other businesses?
Yeah. Other business now. We've got a fish and chip shop down the road and a scrapyard as well.
A successful, young, hard-working man, trying to better his life and trying to further his life. And the police, how many times overall did they come here for this?
About 7 or 8 times for about the sign.
7 or 8 times the police come to his shop. 7 or 8 times. You know how hard it is to get a police officer? 7 or 8 times. And then in the end, the way they got him to remove that sign, and what was the reason for this? Was there a complaint?
There's a shop up the road and Muslim shopkeepers complained about my sign.
So a Muslim shopkeeper has complained about your sign, and the police have come. So basically they're working for the Muslim shopkeeper to come and force you, and in the end bully you for your livelihood to take the sign down. Now, This is bullying. So there's so many cases like this across the country that we need to be standing up to. And standing up to them, because they can't do this. The way I see it, they can't do this. And it's bullying. No one likes a bully. And the British public don't like bullies. And they've bullied him and threatened him with his livelihood in order to make him take down a sign that says, don't fund terrorism. What's wrong with don't fund terrorism? And what I want to ask you is, you see, if we go away and we get you a lawyer, the best lawyer, we get you...
All right, I just couldn't get enough of that. If you want to see that whole video, go to savefletcher.com. That young man's name was Fletcher. You know what, I'm just thinking, I'm so used to Tommy's accent. I'm sure some of our viewers are saying, why did you only caption Fletcher? Because we couldn't understand a bloody word Tommy was saying either. I just can't get enough of those accents, and maybe I'm weird, but I just bloody love it. I just love it. Does that make me weird? That I find it fascinating, the dozen different accents I've discovered in the United Kingdom. If so, I don't care, because I find it endlessly interesting and makes you think about the language a little bit more, which I like to do. Speaking of the United Kingdom, Channel 4, can you throw up the B-roll of Kathy Newman versus Jordan Peterson? Or actually, when you find it, let's throw up a minute of sound on tape, or 30 seconds of sound on tape. You remember Channel 4? It's an awful, awful channel in the United Kingdom, one of the worst. Well, they're all worst. There's no worst. They're all tied for worst. Sky News, BBC, Channel 4, I've gotten to know. They're terrible. Oh my God, they're so bad. You think CNN is bad? CNN is like, it's like the highest order of journalists, the most ethical, accurate journalist in the world compared to Channel 4, BBC. You have no idea what media buy. Here, yeah, throw up the sound for a second.
Offer, you know, that people have within them this capacity to set the world straight, and that's necessary to manifest in the world, and that also doing so is where you find the meaning that sustains you in life.
So what's gone wrong then?
Oh God, all sorts of things have gone wrong. I think that
I won't show you a lot of the. I just wanted to remind you of Kathy Newman. Remember that absolutely disastrous interview? So that's how biased they are. I'm just trying to showing you that clip, reminding you of how biased they are with Kathy Newman. And she was slaughtered in that by Jordan Peterson. Anyhow, Channel 4, awful. Have I told you how bad they are? They're bad. So, like the rest of the establishment in the United Kingdom, they're against Brexit, and they lost. Just like America voted for Trump, even though the establishment voted for Hillary. Same thing in the United Kingdom a year earlier. Not a year earlier, 6 months earlier. It was a premonition. So, in a few months, Brexit's happening. And all these Remainers, they're called Leavers and Remainers. That's how they break it down over there in the UK. And the Remainers, you could call them Ramoners, because they're always moaning, oh, it wasn't fair, and, you know, and too many old people voted to leave, and, you know, we're going to, you know, I showed you that British Sandwich Association guy saying we might not have good sandwiches anymore if we leave the European Union. I've never gotten that out of my mind. So these Ramoners, they want a do-over, they want another vote, they want to find some middle way to stay, and so they had a bunch of millennials on, a special show on Channel 4. And they thought, okay, these millennials voted like 2-to-1 to remain in the European Union, so let's put them on TV and they'll say exactly what we want them to say. It didn't turn out that way. Here, play this montage, this compilation of the comments of these millennials who were specifically brought on the show in proportion. I think it was 70% of them were Remainers and 30% were Leavers. But look at this, just watch this.
It locks us into a neoliberal economic model. And if we want to make real change in Britain, which is what is needed after what we've seen, the complete rejection of the status quo that was the Brexit vote, we need to leave.
Anybody believe he's right or wrong?
Well, I just totally agree with that, and I just wish the government would get on with it. As much as Theresa May...
You agree with that?
Yeah.
You're all leavers? Leavers? You feel basically we should leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once we were told that people told it's a once-a-generation thing, and then suddenly people are now asking for a second vote, although I would have voted Remain, I feel like it kind of devalues a vote, and that you've now set a precedent that what should be a final say. Imagine like in the 1970s, when they were voting on the common market, if people who are our age suddenly said, well, we don't want it, can we have a second vote? You kind of mess around with the actual idea of democracy.
For me, we definitely need to leave. We need to deliver on that, and anything that we can do to prevent us remaining and ruining the trust that we have with the British people, we need to do that.
The future is the rest of the world. The European Union is a stagnating economy as a whole. It is extremely protectionist, and the wider world, there's a lot of growth in the wider world.
That was wonderful. And you even had a little bit of diversity of accents there too, didn't you? Oh, that was great. Well, folks, look, it's almost 1 o'clock, which is when we wrap things up. I see another super chat from Tom Youngjohn, who chips in $1.99, says, God bless Ezra. Well, that's nice of you to say. Folks, our hour together has come to an end for all those of you who chipped in, especially the $100 gift from Eagle's Nest. Thank you so much for that. It was fun. Thank you for letting me show you some video clips, including some reminiscences of trips we've made to Sunderland, to Mexico, and to Israel. Wasn't that fun? And thank you for letting me indulge my love affair with British accents of different varieties. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters to you at home, goodbye, and keep fighting for freedom.